Whether you treat mental health or you just want to learn more about your own mental health, PsychHub has educational resources for anyone and everyone in between. If you're a provider looking to get trained in cognitive behavioral therapy or want to help out a family member or colleague, our specialized certifications give you in-demand skills and boost your qualifications. Plus, they are self-paced, so you can take them on your own schedule. Visit psychhub.com/learning to get started.
Hi, I'm Marjorie Morrison.
And this is Patrick Kennedy.
And you are listening to the Psych Hub podcast, The Future of Mental Health.
I want to start this episode by saying that I have so much respect for this guest. At 29 years old, he has the kindest heart and is wise beyond his years. Today you'll hear from pro baseball player Drew Robinson. Drew was drafted in the 4th round in the MLB back in 2010, where he made his debut at the Texas Rangers. He was traded to the St. Louis Cardinals and most recently played as both infielder and outfielder for the San Francisco Giants. That was until April 16, 2020, when Drew survived a suicide attempt. But the real message, and the most important message, is what happened after. In what has only been a 1-year-long journey, Drew has found a newfound purpose in life. He's gone on to share his story with his teammates and now through the world with his ESPN documentary, Alive, the Drew Robinson story. I admired Drew's bravery and his ability to use his voice as a mental health advocate in a profession where there's no crying in baseball. It's a challenging discussion to have, but Patrick and I want to emphasize the importance of not being afraid to have the conversation, and that you never know if asking someone if they're okay or having them share their experience can help change someone's life. We are so fortunate to catch up with Drew before he went off to spring training with the Giants to learn about and hear the work that he's doing to promote both physical and mental resilience. Before we start, I want you to know that we discuss the topic of suicide, which may be triggering. If you're experiencing a mental health crisis, have survived a suicide attempt, or have lost a loved one due to suicide, you are not alone. If you or someone you know is experiencing a mental health crisis, please call 911 or visit the nearest ER. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline and the Crisis Text Line are available to help 24/7 if you're experiencing thoughts of suicide or emotional distress. We have those numbers listed in the description of the episode. Drew, thank you so much for joining us on our Future Mental Health podcast. Tell us a little bit about why you're here today and what your journey's been like.
My mental health battles and journey kind of started, I can remember back to when I was a kid, it was starting, obviously without me realizing it. I was just always an emotional wreck. I was always emotional roller coaster, a lot of ups and downs, not understanding how to handle any kind of situation or adversity that happened to me. And looking back, it's kind of silly to expect like an 8-year-old, 9-year-old to be in that position. But I think even though being that young, things were just always so extreme with me. It was always on top of the world or at the very bottom, rock bottom. So I lived that way pretty much my whole life. And unfortunately, it bled into my adulthood. And on April 16th, 2020, I attempted suicide. By some miracle, I made it through. And an even more insane miracle, I came out of it with a clear mindset and intention on using it in some kind of positive way to help people that are feeling those same dark thoughts and same emotional ups and downs, and just trying to make sense of a lot of things, try to help them not do what I did and experience this kind of awakening and enlightenment that I've experienced since then.
It's an amazing story, one that you survived it, and then another that you were able to channel it into making such an impact for so many. Was that something that took a while?
It was pretty immediate. That was probably one of the more crazy things about this, more so than the anatomy part of it, of just surviving. Like I can like kind of feel it when I talk about it again, but just this really strong sense of love and appreciation for everything and everyone in my life. Immediately after my surgery and coming out of anesthesia, like as soon as I was like coherent enough to kind of think about things, it was just like, boom, like just punched me right in the face. Like, I love everyone. I love everything. Like, I'm appreciative of all those internal struggles I had at some point. Like I was able to like give thanks for them. I had a really strong understanding that I wanted to use this and make people realize that this isn't the answer and this isn't where you want to go. It's a bad decision. So that was April 17th around like 1 o'clock in the morning when I came out of my first surgery. So it eventually got to a point where my family and I decided to wait on it, like kind of sit on it and make sure we didn't jump into anything too soon. And those are a long couple of months because it was such a strong sensation of wanting to do something about this and start getting my feet wet with mental health advocacy. And just thankfully everything turned out how it was supposed to, and timing was great. I even went through a couple of ups and downs. I had 2 different episodes of depression before that the story actually broke. So I was able to put my feet back in those positions of understanding what people are going through and what I was going through, and not lose sight of why I eventually got to a place that I got to, and not just be on top of the world and being unrelatable for people who are struggling.
It's just remarkable just listening to you. And, ironically, I asked the question because I assumed that you were going to say that it took a while. And I wasn't expecting that you were going to say that it was immediate. And I just find that so fascinating. And that alone is such a teachable moment to so many people, to know that these moments can change that quickly, right? And I think that's what so much of these messaging is, that nothing is forever, and that our emotions and all of it can change, and there are options and there are treatments. But sometimes we just get to such a dark place.
I think it's interesting too, and I say this with caution, but something that's helped me is like just telling myself nothing lasts forever. And that means some of these negative emotions and kind of like the self-doubt that I fall into at times still, and those bouts of depression again, and some anxiety and all that. Like, it helps me. And I say it with caution because it also, of someone with a pessimistic mindset, which is what I had before my incident. Like, I was just, I can spin anything into a negative. Nothing lasts forever can be used in a bad way, where even the good times, well, they're going to end soon. And that's scary. That can give someone with anxiety, that can trigger some anxious thoughts. So I say that with caution, but I've found that it helps me a lot with those times where things don't feel so good. And I know that I can wake up tomorrow and for some reason, just a switch will go off and I can be back to where I was, where I've been living at most of the time during these last 11 months of appreciation and gratitude and love. So it's, like I said, it's something that's really helped me. And I think it's a powerful, quick affirmation.
I think the big challenge is how do you survive the feelings, right? The feelings are so overwhelming. It's really something to think about, how that thinking can block out any possibility to envision the end of the tunnel. And in recovery, we do just for today or one day at a time, really, because our minds, and I can totally relate, kind of catastrophize everything. And it is all or nothing. And I relate to that. Where we are as a nation right now is we're starting to appreciate how there are actual exercises, much like you do your physical exercises to be a, Major League Baseball player. Ultimately in the next generation, when our kids grow up, they're going to be able to have a whole lot of exercises to strengthen their ability to combat that overwhelming feeling, where they can support their prefrontal cortex riding over. You mentioned you've got this new insight about how you always had this issue of being able to mediate those catastrophizing type emotions and feelings. You're picking up on it now earlier because you're now more focused, like when you're going to be vulnerable for doing that.
Yeah, it's something that I've been kind of forced to learn about myself, and just kind of like with my practices and journaling and such, I've just naturally become more aware of those initial feelings that eventually and used to lead to spiraling for me. And I'm just constantly scanning things. Like sometimes I'm not even thinking about it, but I'm able to sense when things are starting to feel uncomfortable and I'm starting to have similar thoughts and self-doubt. And and being super hard on myself, and unforgiving and things. And at times that's really exhausting. But something I said in the film or the article, I forget which one it was quoted in, but you don't just achieve self-growth. Like, it's not something you can just attain one day and not have to work at it. Like, unfortunately, sometimes it is work, and sometimes that's the last thing you want to do. Like, with people with depression or just people who are dealing with some mental struggles, like literally brushing your teeth or like taking a shower with some days might feel like the biggest task in the world. So like the idea of working on yourself to feel better is the last thing you want to do. But I've come to realize that happiness and like love and all these things are habits instead of just feelings. So like these habits and rituals that I've grown to know are things that I believe in. And I found that this sense of happiness that I feel most days is the answer from a lot of routines and stuff that I've done. So it's really kind of turned into a habit, just like those dark thoughts, like when adversity would hit, I would just jump straight to, it's your fault because you're a bad person. That was just some kind of habit that I had created unconsciously. But now that I'm kind of working on things consciously, I've realized that happiness and love and all these things are just completely habits. And it's like something that everyone can kind of work on and get better at. And just like any other habit in their life, the more they work at it, the stronger it'll get.
You know, Drew, you are like such an example of this new movement called neuroplasticity. I mean, first of all, on the physical side, the fact that your brain survived this is just a miracle, as Marjorie said. But there's another part of your brain that survived this that you're talking about right now, and that is, you know, we hardwire our response mechanisms to life stresses, and they become habitualized, and then they become our own self, the way we view ourselves. And it's often in response to various traumatic events in our lives. And we might not have this new fixed way of thinking, like, I'm not good. And so this pattern of what just happened confirms I'm not good. And then that go down that slippery slope of catastrophizing. I mean, it's a mind-boggling type of thing when you think about what it would mean for everything that we take for granted in our society and how we live our lives unconsciously in many respects. That if we were to actually figure out literally how does our thinking manifest itself, and how do we repeat those ways of thinking in every decision we make?
Yeah, it's important. I mean, it's one of those things, it's uncomfortable at first. So unfortunately, I was one of those people, but a lot of people kind of don't buy into it because it's new and it seems corny at first, but like we've just talked about, things get so habitual that you can do things without even thinking about them. So at some point, the more you work on it, the weird part would be not doing these kind of practices and thinking positively. Like it can eventually get to a point where doing those things feels weird not to do them. So the first time I told myself out loud, I love myself, or the first time I said I deserve happiness, or the first time I was saying those things to myself, whether it's just in my head or out loud, it felt really uncomfortable. But now it's to a point where the days I don't do that, it feels weird. And it also kind of leads into a little bit of my old self thinking of some negative thoughts, because it's like, oh, well, I didn't do that today, so today is probably going to be a bad day. So it's like, it's total evidence that the more you do these things, the more habitual they get, the more ingrained they get, and the more you believe them, and that eventually gets to the point where it feels weird not to do them.
I mean, you're a Major League Baseball player. That's what it's all about. It's muscle memory. It's like going through to get to be the best of the best, you've got to commit yourself to, you know, those types of exercises so they become secondhand. And that's the same in your mind, right? You're talking about, we got to do exercises so that we act, you know, in an optimal way for our ability to self-actualize. But it's like you said, it's still new to the general public. But you could be a great spokesperson for it, I can tell you.
It's new to me. You can ask my family and Diana and my friends. Like I still have a lot of those similar thoughts and feelings at times, that every once in a while I feel like I'm out of energy to combat. And override and reframe in ways. And it's something I'm still learning. And a lot of times I do fall short of that and kind of let those negative thoughts overcome me and feel overwhelming. And like I said, I've gone through 2 pretty serious phases of depression in the last 11 months. But I definitely want it to be known that I haven't just had this awakening and things have just been sunshine and rainbows since. Like I've had some very dark days, and I've even had some passive suicidal thoughts since. But because of these things that I've been working on, some of these things I've been practicing, I feel like I'm in a better place to accept things for what they are and understand that it's not the end and that things will get better eventually. Even though like right now, I feel like I have no control over them. I know that in a week from now, like we kind of talked about at the beginning, in a week from now, things can feel completely different. And I think of it almost objectively where a week ago I felt great, but today I feel kind of crappy. So why can't things go back the same way? They turned one way to get to this uncomfortable feeling, so they can easily turn back to a comfortable feeling the same way it went bad. So I just try to think about my feelings in an objective mindset and try to take the emotions out of like why it feels so real. And like a lot of times you can't really come up with evidence of why those feelings are it. So thinking things objectively really kind of helps me. And again, I haven't figured it all out yet, and I'm not this mental master yet. I still have these really difficult challenges with my mind, and but I think that helps me be a little bit more relatable to people that are in these dark days, and know that there's hope for better days because I've experienced both ends.
Nobody has this figured out. So when you said like, I'm not this, mental mastermind, nobody is, period. There's not a single person who has this figured out, who doesn't have dark feelings and insecure feelings and bad feelings, from time to time. The depth of it might be more or less for other people, but that's actually life, right? That's what I think for whatever reason, society today, maybe social media plays into it because everybody's lives look so glamorous on social media. But in real life, that's you don't know what good times are if you haven't felt bad ones. And that's what gives us perspective. So I think part of it is a societal issue, and I have a friend who always says, and I love this line, she always says that, be careful what you tell yourself because it has roots, and I think when you talked about that kind of self-talk, we don't realize sometimes what we're saying to ourselves, and then we start to believe what we're saying, and it has roots, and it builds these foundations. And I think, what you're learning is that you have to I actively work on it. So I get it too, but actively work on changing that internal dialogue. And I think we can all relate. And it's these kinds of conversations that make it normal for other people, because then they hear it and they think, oh, so I'm not the only one going through this. So I'm curious, as you've gone out now and started to be an advocate, I think you went out to your team, the Giants, and spoke on World Suicide Prevention Day. What has it been like for you to put yourself into this place to be able to share? And has there been good times, bad times from it?
Yes, definitely good times. It's been overwhelmingly positive. Hearing people's support and just throwing their love at me, just letting me know that it's okay and that they still care about me and they still love me and all these things. So it's just been powerful. There also has been some down days personally from it, because like I said, at times I'm talking all this talk about doing this and doing that, and this will help. And at times it's kind of like, comes off as, for me, like my old self and like my ego is like, oh, you're a know-it-all, like, oh, you got it all figured out or whatever. Like, I know we just talked about that, no one does, but sometimes when I talk about it and it feels like I have achieved self-growth or whatever you want to say, there's times where I kind of feel almost contradicting or hypocritical, and it's because I still have those down days. And it's like, well, if I'm talking to someone and tell them just do this, just do that, why can't I do that for myself? So there's been some self-doubt and some questions coming up in my mind because of this, but it's been totally outweighed by the overwhelming positive that positivity that's been thrown at me. And it's just been such a cool experience because I feel like I've done a decent job of letting people in and understanding that just powerful, overwhelming feeling of genuine happiness and genuine love that I felt. And I feel like the more I talk about it, the clearer it gets. And the more that people can kind of feel it from me, like they kind of feel that energy and that, and those vibes that I kind of put out. Just like life, there's good and bad about it, but just like life, there's way more good than there is bad about it. So it's just been a really powerful 11 months now, and it's something that I don't know. I just feel strongly about that. I think will continue for the rest of my life, and for whoever I'm lucky enough to kind of share it with.
We will be back in a minute. If you like this interview and you want to hear others, follow us on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. You'll be able to catch up on episodes you may have missed, like our conversation with Dr. Ken Rosenberg on sex addiction, and you'll get new ones delivered directly to you. More with Drew Robinson after the break. You know that airplane metaphor of putting on your oxygen mask first before you help someone else? Mental health is no different. In order to take care of others, you have to help yourself first. But what does that look like? Take Psych Hub's Mental Health Ally certification for starters. It's 8 one-hour courses covering anything and everything, from substance use to diversity in mental health to suicide prevention and more. Plus, it's self-paced, so you can take it on your own schedule. Become a certified, trusted resource to come to for mental health concerns. Visit psychhub.com/learning to get started. When you get those moments of self-doubt, like I was saying, we all have this, where you feel maybe disingenuous, or you think I'm portraying that I've got it all figured out, but internally, I'm feeling awful or whatnot. What are you doing right now? Like, what kind of mental exercises are you working on to kind of combat that?
I've gotten really consistent with meditation and journaling, and I found that those two help me the most. And it's interesting because, and I've said this before and other things, but a lot of times I don't feel it right away. Like if I wake up and I'm feeling those overwhelming negative thoughts, or feel like a wave of depression is getting ready to come over me, it's not like I go and meditate and boom, it's gone. It's kind of like a plant where I plant the seed and it takes some time to grow, and like it's something that trickles into making that feeling or those phases just shorter. So I've noticed that it kind of just bleeds into my next couple hours of the day, or maybe it lasts a little bit longer, but it turns into 3 to 4 days instead of a week or week and a half. And I don't know, I'm sure there's a science behind it. I just know that getting things out on paper for me, actually writing them with pen to paper, just like mind bomb it onto my journal and just get it all out, and like kind of at times see the ugliness in it and realize that those are totally irrational feelings. Like they feel very real when they're inside my head, and they feel like I can't control them when they're inside my head. But as soon as I either say it out loud or write it down, I kind of see that there's really no evidence of why I feel that way. Like what must I believe that makes me feel this is true? Like those kind of things I say to myself. And like a lot of times I can't come up with a reason why. And that's something that before I would never do. And I would just kind of like, just let it overcome me and overtake me for the next 2 to 3 weeks. And I would just be grumpy. I would be short tempered and zero patience. And again, I still have a lot of those things, but I've noticed that with these things that I try to do on a daily basis, it makes those quick bursts of those reactions a lot shorter, shorter phases. And I think it's because I'm constantly reminding myself consciously that, I don't know, I'm a good person, I deserve love. All these self-love practices, I think they just kind of eventually turn out in a short and make things a lot shorter than just kind of grinding through things and not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel.
Have there been people that have shared with you that they've felt similarly?
Yeah. And that's another one of the things that at times my ego tries to spin into a negative, because I just, like I said, like we've talked about, I want this to help people. So at times I feel like when I'm not personally helping and like going at and like actually doing the work with someone, it kind of feels like I'm not helping. And at times that's hard because I hear people that have similar thoughts. And since I was in that position, I know at times I never would have, not at times, I know that I never reached out and let people know really how I was feeling. So when people tell me how they have similar thoughts or they're feeling similar things, at times it's hard to hear, because I want to, like, I hear that and like I immediately want to like just jump into their life, like say, no, like this is what I do to help. Maybe you can try this. And like, I just physically can't do that for everyone. So I have to remind myself that just the relatability is the power behind this, and like letting people know that, one, you're not alone, and two, you're not misunderstood. And I think that's something that I felt that more than, because a lot of these things, that these mental health movements and things, it's based around you're not alone, which is beautiful to me. And I completely understand, but there's also this other side of it where it's not really like, I never felt alone. I just felt super misunderstood. So from the outside, like, who would understand that I am feeling so bad about myself when I've been able to achieve the lifestyle that I achieved? I have a supportive family. I have a healthy body, and I'm able to do these things that a lot of people would probably wish for. So the fact that I feel so bad, like, no one's going to understand that. So the feeling of being misunderstood is equally as important as you're not alone. And I think that's something that I know is, and again, like, letting people understand that there's other people that are feeling that way is the power behind this. And that relatability is something that a lot of people that are struggling are really searching for. And it's something that's very comforting. And I know that firsthand.
Yeah, I have had a story myself in recovery where, I give the speeches. I told my own story in a book. But for me to stay centered, it's all in the interpersonal sharing.
Exactly. Yes, the ripple effect. It's being genuine and working yourself with your close circle, and that will eventually bleed out into relationships with them, and that'll bleed out into the relationships with their extended circle, and before you know it, it's affecting a little bit of everybody. So that ripple effect of slowly working yourself, and I don't know, it's a very slow process, unfortunately, at times. And at times it feels like you kind of got it figured out, and then boom, you're hit with another little wave of negativity. But having that slow build with yourself that eventually leads to your close circle is the most important thing. And I think that's the misconception at times, is that because of our society and having that instant gratification mindset and like wanting things fixed right now, and let's fix that with a distraction instead of like actual work, actually doing the dirty work and like letting things out and putting them all on the table, and doing that with a strong support system or someone that you just trust. I think that's where the change is going to happen.
What about athletes? I'm just curious. I mean, how much of this, when you are such an elite athlete, right, to get to a place where you're going to go minor leagues and major leagues, and there's so much mental training that goes alongside it, and it's so public with how you're doing. And did that play into it for you with beating yourself up? And then I'm just curious what your thoughts are that for other athletes, or what kind of advice you might have for them.
Yeah, that was 100% led to some of those those bad habits that I created. I put all my self-worth in how I was performing in baseball, how I was affecting people. And anytime I did something for myself, I just felt so selfish. And there's a balance, right? Like there's times where you're doing things and it actually is selfish, but there's also times where you're doing stuff for yourself, and it's actually going to take care of other people in the long run by feeling a little selfish at the time of like saying no to, I don't know, some event that is like pretty understood that you probably should be there. But if you just like commit to yourself and say, I need to take care of myself today, and know that that's not being selfish, that's just working on yourself and practicing some self-love, I put all my self-worth in those settings. And when I was underperforming in baseball, I thought I was underperforming as a person, and that led into that eventually led to feeling underperforming in my relationships with my family, with Diana, with my friends. I felt lesser about myself, with my confidence, my intelligence. Everything was wrapped into one. And when one of those things felt like I was lacking in one, it felt like somehow, for some reason, every single one of them started feeling lesser. And I just eventually felt lesser about myself as a whole. I don't know. Like I said, I just kind of believe in these practices that feel, like I've said in other things, they feel cheesy at first and they feel kind of corny, but like just saying like, no, like I love myself, or no, I am smart. Like I'm the smartest person in this room, not in this room, but I'm the smartest person that I can be. And I'm working as hard as I can. And like genuinely feeling it though, and not just saying it to just say it, like actually feeling it and saying, I'm not, like for me, it was as elementary as saying I'm not stupid. Like that was one of my biggest insecurities was in my life, was just straight intelligence comparing to other people. Like anytime I made a mistake, it was like, no, that's because I'm dumb. And so starting in the most basic way of saying I'm smart, like that's it. Like I said, sometimes that just feels weird because I've never done it before, but just reminding myself I'm as smart as I can be right now. And I'm learning things every day. It's like, again, it feels weird. It feels corny, but it's powerful. And it's something that, like we've talked about, eventually bleed into the subconscious habits that we've created over time, because it took me 27, almost 28 years to get to where I got to in that dark place. So it's not all overnight. Like I was very negative my whole life, but it eventually got so negative that I believe that I needed to do what I attempted. But it can happen the exact same way, or it can happen on the other end of the spectrum, where you can just convince yourself that no matter what happens to you, you're strong enough to get through it. You're smart enough to get through it. You deserve all the happiness and love that you think you deserve. And it's just almost like a blind belief that you're like, I don't know exactly why, but I know it's going to happen. And it's, that's what I did in a negative way. And now that's what I'm working on getting to in a positive way.
You are such a confident person, and to be able to speak like this, and you have so much insight. I mean, really, I think it's very hard for people to have insight into themselves. And because we're so busy covering up our insecurities that we don't stop and really pause and just look at them and combat them. Because it's funny when you said the same thing could happen on the other end of the spectrum. I was going to say that, I was going to say, but the same thing can happen on the other end. And you said it. And I think that what that comes down to is that, your comment that you made earlier, which is that you don't just achieve, I wrote this down, you don't just achieve self-growth, you have to work on it. And you're working on it. I mean, you are working on it. And I mean, I know, Patrick and I, we work on it all the time. I mean, I have this joke at Psych Hub with our team. I say, like, I'm literally working on it every minute. I mean, it isn't even like a minute goes by where I'm not thinking to myself, like, could I have done that better? What should I have done there? Like, it's just and so it's funny when someone else on our team was like, yeah, I'm on an every second basis, but I think that's what it takes, really, is that we don't get there. It's not like, oh yeah, I'm there. I'm self-actualized, as Patrick was saying. We don't get there. It's a lifelong journey, and that's part of this journey. And I think the trick is just being nice to ourselves as we're going through it. And so many times it is just stopping and saying, you are smart, and you are kind, and you are helpful, and those nice things of whatever it is. And the funny thing about all of this is what my insecurities might be complete, and I might feel very confident about some things, could be the complete opposite of yours or Patrick's. And so if someone gives me affirmation of what I already feel good about, it doesn't really do anything to me. But if I'm what I'm insecure about, I need that affirmation, right? So it's an interesting, I mean, I've learned this in being a therapist for so many years. It is very interesting to see how we are all very different, and we need different affirmation. And the stories that or not stories, but what you're telling yourself now, in 10 years, you might not even need that, but it might be something different. It might be that you're a parent and you have other, insecurities or whatnot, but that's the beauty of life.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just a lot simpler than you want it to be. Like sometimes it's like, well, why am I happy? Or what did I do that deserves like so much happiness and love? Like, well, it's just because you do. Like sometimes your brain like wants all this like info and this like evidence and like, well, like deserve like earning something. Like I need to earn this. It's like, no, like I'm just a caring person. I'm a loving person, and it's just that's it. Like I'm happy because I'm happy, not because of I've achieved things, because I've done these things that warrant happiness. It's just I am happy, and it's like it's something that just like in you, and then everything else is just icing on the cake. So it's like sometimes you want all this evidence and all this like earning and deserving, all these things that like warrant happiness and love, but really it's like, no, I am love, I am happy.
Yeah, and it's interesting too about happiness, because it goes back to this expectation that we're supposed to feel happy all the time, and we don't feel happy all the time, right? It's really just a place that we want to achieve more often than not. But it is somebody was saying to me, I think it was over the weekend, that it's like, you live life in the peaks and the valleys, and you hope to be able to sort of have the vast majority of it somewhere in the middle. So, Drew, this was amazing. And I just know that it's so inspirational to so many, and especially your authenticity, because you're not being disingenuous with your journey, and you're being authentic with it. And that's a beautiful story to tell in itself, is that it's just a journey, and you're doing the best that you can, and you're using your experience to help others, which is the best thing that anyone can do. And you have such a tremendous story. We always like to end these podcasts with the same question, which is, if you had a magic wand for the future of mental health, what would it look like for you?
I just feel like again, it's the simplicity, like finding the beauty in the simplicity of this mental health. And you don't need to do this crazy amount of work. At times it'll be like that, but just like fall in love with the simplicity in life and simplicity of yourself. And like, I'm happy because I'm happy. I love people because I am love. I just like, there doesn't need to be all these like intangibles that go with it. You can just believe in yourself for the most simple reasons and build off that. And starting there is like the most powerful thing you can do. And I've said it in a couple of things since my story's released, but you cannot pour from an empty cup. And once you start taking care of yourself, you start taking care of people around you. And before you know it, those people are taking care of themselves and taking care of the people around them. And that's when it leads to this insane change of mental health in the world. And so that's why I guess my wand would be the beauty and the power of simplicity.
That's awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And I know and I have a very strong feeling our paths will cross many times in the years ahead as we are out there as advocates. And I really look forward to it, especially getting to meet you in person.
Yeah, man, this was great. So I just, like I said in the beginning, I just start rambling, and it's just something that I love to do now. I just love talking about mental health and talking about any kind of growth mindset conversation. So this is the stuff I live for now. So I appreciate you guys having me on.
Oh, we really appreciate you coming on. Thank you, Drew.
What's cracking, Hope Nation? It's your friendly neighborhood, Kevin Hines, and this is your Psych Hub Brain Health Tip of the Week. Therapy. It's not for everybody, I'll admit. Some people need peer support. Some people just need self-care. But if you find that neither are impacting your mental health, consider going to therapy if you can avail of it. Here's a few myths about therapy that I'm going to dispel for you right now. It doesn't have to be forever. Sometimes you just have an issue you need to resolve, a problem to get to the root of. And once you have a handle on it, you don't need to go for an entire year. It doesn't have to be focused on your childhood. Mental health providers should focus on evidence-based treatment that is proven to be effective. However, your therapist isn't going to tell you what to do. They want to give you suggestions and guide you to the solutions that they believe are the best for your circumstance. But it's up to you to change. Lastly, it's not going to fix you. A, because you're not broken, and B, because the purpose of therapy is to ensure you have the tools and the resources to cope with all of life's challenges. So, if you've been debating about going to therapy or entering therapy, try scheduling an online session to see if it's right for you. Teletherapy has been amazing to me. I'm sure it'll help you too.
As always, thank you for listening to our podcast.
If you enjoyed the show, drop us a review.
If you haven't already, subscribe to our podcast for the latest episodes.
For the latest insights, check us out at psychhub.com.
Calling all mental health providers. Looking to specialize in treating adolescents? Check out PsychHub's cognitive behavioral therapy courses. Receive specialized certifications and hone in on your skills. Get 1-year access to patient videos and worksheets that you can email or text to your clients to keep them engaged in between sessions. Plus, you'll be placed on the PsychHub registry, where consumers of mental health who are searching for certified providers that are specialized in their condition can find you. To learn more about CBT for adolescent training, visit psychhub.com/learning.
Hi, I'm Marjorie Morrison,
And this is Patrick Kennedy.
and you are listening to the Psych Hub podcast, The Future of Mental Health.